What's up, guys? Mike Sharp here, Sharp Investing. I am just a guy who does videos on the stocks that I research and sometimes buy and sell. And I should warn you, this is not investing advice. I might not be that great at this, but I do share my thoughts and what I do on this channel. And so you can judge for yourself whether I'm any good at this. But again, not investing advice. I'm just a guy. So let's talk about Intel. Intel is a bloodbath. Everyone knows what a bloodbath it is. We've all seen the results over the last year. It's in complete free fall, and we do not know where the bottom is. So I thought I'd kind of go against the grain a little bit here and bring up some of the potential positives that are in this most recent earnings release that they put out for Q4 2022. And I will do that after I go over just the general problems that they're having here. But I won't spend much time on that because I think you guys all know a lot of the issues they're having. I would just say this as a general overview. This is a turnaround. So if you've read the book by Peter Lynch, One Up on Wall Street, he talks about how there's various different categories that he puts companies in, and turnarounds is one of them. And he talks about how if you get turnarounds right, you can make a lot of money. But on the other side, if you get them wrong, it can be a real disaster, right? So also Buffett talks about turnarounds. He says, I think his quote is, "We don't do turnarounds." So that shows you what he thinks of them. I personally have tried to buy turnarounds, and I have bought a bunch of turnarounds in my life. And I tell you, my warning is, if you buy a turnaround on the way down, if you buy the falling knife on a turnaround, you can get cut up pretty badly on it because, like I said, we don't know where the bottom is on these things. So my overall view on something like this is I wait to see the turn. And Intel has not shown that they're turning around yet. They're still falling, right? So that's my warning on turnarounds. I'm not ever buying catching a falling knife on turnarounds again in my life. So if we go quickly over the problems, like you guys know, AMD is eating their lunch on data centers. This is a key area. AMD released their earnings as well, and their data center revenue was up 42% year over year. So they are taking share from Intel, and it doesn't look like it's anywhere near stopping. So that's a major problem. Another problem they're having is PC. The PC segment is declining. Now I think that's just a cyclical issue that will turn around. I think Intel's still got a very strong foothold in that market. So that's just a cyclical issue. I think the data center one is the biggest problem right now. And then, the other biggest problem, as everyone knows, is TSMC is crushing them on the leading edge chips. And the way the industry works is the leading edge chips is where the highest margins are. So if you can't make the best chips, you're basically in a commodity world with smaller margins. So TSMC is eating all the good business here right now. And as we know, Pat Gelsinger's plan is to catch Intel up by 2024 and then leapfrog TSMC in 2025 as they get to their 18A node. And so that's a massive undertaking, and I don't know if anybody believes them. There's not very many people who believe that they're going to actually succeed. So if we go into the dividend and cash flow, this to me looks like absolutely terrible capital allocation. I don't understand this at all. I don't know why they are maintaining this dividend and at the expense of, and instead of cutting the dividend, what they're doing is cutting wages. They have laid people off. They're cutting Capex, which is presumably what they need to do to achieve this, to achieve parity with TSMC. I don't understand it at all. I think if I was them, I would just cut the dividend and take all the pain all at once. Like, there's no more dividend. We're turning this ship around. Everything's going into catching up with TSMC, and just take the hit all at once, but they're trying to looks like they're trying to slow the, slow the decline somehow with this dividend. But I think that's ridiculous to try and keep the stock price up that way. Anyway, onto the dividend as well. The CFO used some language when they asked him about the dividend, which was slightly different from what he said last quarter. He said that, we're committed to maintaining a competitive dividend, whereas last time he said we're going to keep the basically said we're going to maintain the dividend. So that slight language makes me think they might reduce the dividend, but not eliminate it totally. So that's sort of one of the thoughts there. But if they did cut the dividend, this stock would absolutely collapse. I think you might get cut in half or more. Who knows though? I think that's the only thing really holding the company up. So if we talk about Capex as well, they said that they are not going to spend more than 35% of revenue on Capex. And so if we look at the revenue guidance, which is a total mess, next quarter, the midpoint is 11 billion in revenue, which would be 40% down year over year. Pat Gelsinger said last quarter, he said that was the bottom last quarter, but it wasn't the bottom. And so these guys don't even know where the bottom is, right? So remember talking about the falling knife. If Pat Gelsinger doesn't know where the bottom is, we definitely don't know where it is. So this is way worse than he, projected last time. And if, getting back to Capex, if they get up to 50 billion in revenue next year, which would be a total disaster, that would equate to 17.5 billion in Capex at their maximum 35% of revenue. Now, if they got 60% or 60 billion in revenue, that would equate to maximum of 21 billion in Capex. Originally, they were shooting at 29 billion for 2023. So this is a massive cut in an area that's absolutely critical to them. So this is very problematic. So the problems are just compounding. Meanwhile, TSMC has cut their Capex guidance, but they're still going to hit 32 to 36 billion. So, they may be falling further behind here. I'm not sure if that is relevant to the process nodes or not, but it's concerning if you're an Intel shareholder. What else do we want to talk about here? Capital allocation is bad. Yep. Okay, now getting on to the potentially positive things, right? So if you've read You Can Be a Stock Market Genius by Joel Greenblatt, atrocious title for a book, pretty cheesy, but it's a really good book. And he talks about how in spinoffs, now Intel's not a spinoff, but when you have a spinoff, what he says is usually if you wait 2 years after the spinoff, more, give or take a few months, the spun off company will actually start showing some signs of life. And that's because what happens in a spinoff is you get a brand new management team on the spun off company, and it takes them about 2 years to create the plan and then implement it and start getting the results from the new plan they've implemented. So, back to Intel, Pat Gelsinger's two-year anniversary is in February 23. So he's almost been there 2 years now. And my view on what happened with Gelsinger is it's a bit like Obama coming into office and being handed this total pile of crap by, Bush and by Bernanke and Greenspan. He got handed this total mess of an economic situation, and he took the hit for it, right? This isn't a political statement. I'm not saying Obama's this or Bush is that. I'm just saying that the fact was that the seeds of the mess that Obama had to deal with were sown before him, and then he took the hit on it. And I think that's what's happening here with Gelsinger, or Bob Swan, who doesn't appear to have been a tech guy. The previous CEO, he was sort of an MBA numbers guy, and basically they fell way behind on the tech on his watch, and there was delays everywhere and all this kind of stuff. And so now this is actually his mess that Gelsinger is dealing with. But I think that, if we look under the hood a little bit, we might see that Intel is becoming a tech company again, right? They were kind of an old stodgy, I don't know, like what to call them, but they were not really an innovative tech company for a few years there. And so now we start seeing some of the products they're coming out with are starting to get good reviews, right? So we see this, not the data center chip, that's still a bit of a problem. So this Sapphire Rapids chip, I was looking at some reviews and it looks like it's still not enough to compete head on with AMD yet. But if we look at their PC chips, these tend to get really good reviews. They come up with this sort of mid-level GPU that's getting very good reviews, right? And so this is the GPU particular. That's a new avenue for Intel, and showing that they can start to compete on other companies' turf. So that's just a few signs of life, because Gelsinger basically, when he said Intel's back, baby, we're a tech company again, right? And so he's starting to put the pieces in place for this stuff. But the one main thing, which I think is quite positive, even though it's somewhat minor, is that they came out with their process node update, and there were no delays, right? So if you've watched Intel for a while, delays were the name of the game. They're always delaying everything. Everything was behind schedule. And there was not, they said all of the iterations that they're building are actually on schedule, right? So they reaffirmed their goal to catch up to TSMC in 2024 and then leapfrog them in 2025. So I think that's actually a small win. And if we get through 2023 and they release their next process node here in the second half of 2023 on schedule, I think you might see that the market might start to believe them, that they're actually turning around, right? So that's what I'm going to look for. Are they staying on track, or are they going to start delaying this stuff and like, well, actually, it's going to be 2026 when we're going to, or 25, we'll catch up to. We'll release our 20A, and then 26, the 18A will come out. So that's what I'm keeping an eye on. But this is all just kind of speculation. I'm just trying to find something good here. But I do think that's positive. And I would reiterate what I said before, is that if we bet on a turnaround that may happen, that can be really disastrous, right? So I want to see the turn. I want to see them, okay, they've got that out. Oh, they're actually getting the 28 out on time. That's coming, right? And then you might see the stock kind of find a bottom and move up as the market starts to believe. But we aren't there yet. My last potentially positive point here is that I think that Intel is now a defense company in the U.S. I was reading Chip Wars, which is quite an interesting book. I would recommend it if you have any interest in semiconductors. But I think that now, after this CHIPS Act is passed, that made me realize that Intel might actually be a defense company that is backed by the U.S. government now. The U.S. government needs leading edge chips for the military. And right now they're dependent on a company that's in Taiwan, right? So that puts them in a precarious position. So I think that the U.S. government actually cannot afford for Intel to fail. So they will make sure that they don't fail, and that they're backed and they're given what they need, which is being shown right now with the CHIPS Act. So like something like Lockheed or General Dynamics, you can see what U.S. backing does for these kinds of companies. So I don't really know what that's worth, but I do think it puts a floor under the company. I don't think that this is Intel is a zero. I think that they're going to be they have fairly strong backing, is what I'm saying. But anyway, I think you got the point. Those are some ideas with Intel, and yeah, I'm just going to keep watching it. If something comes up, maybe I'll do another video on it. But I wanted to get one out for once because I've been watching it for years now, and I just thought it was time. But if you have any thoughts on Intel, if I'm totally off on some of this stuff, let me know. Or if you agree, let me know as well. And I think that's it for now. I will catch you in the next video, guys.